Hey, what? That was a bit of a fire drill.
Right. Well, hello everybody. Sorry about the delay. We had some technical difficulties. Welcome to Burger Consulting Group's last webinar of the year. My name is Tamara, and I'm the PMO specialist here at BCG. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. And today we're delighted to share some industry insights, and we'll have our speakers present for the first 45 to 50 minutes or so, and then we'll have the last 10 minutes for your questions that you can send us here in the chat. So without any further delays, we'll have the speakers introduce themselves, starting with our president and founder, Christian Berger.
Thanks, Tamana. Thanks, everybody, for coming to today's webinar. We're pretty excited about this topic. I've been in the industry for, let's say, 30 plus years. Started my career at FMI. I've had Burger Consulting for a little 28, 29 years. Worked with many construction firms around the U.S. on automation projects of different kinds. And I can remember starting with mechanical and electrical contractors that were just, well, mechanicals anyway, that were fabricating sheet metal. And they had small fab shops and they just served the jobs and that was fine. And now we're really moving pretty strongly into this prefab and modular environment. And it's changing the dynamic. You can't manage the shop the way you did when you had, just a bunch of coil lines. And so I brought with me two of my friends and colleagues in the industry who will introduce themselves, and and then we'll jump right into the material. Dave, you want to go first?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Dave Pikey. I run technology at the Hill Group, which is I'm primarily in mechanical in the greater Chicago and Indianapolis markets. We are a piping, plumbing, sheet metal, fire protection, mechanical service commissioning, and energy solutions organization. And again, primarily serving those the mechanical needs for Chicago and Indianapolis.
Super. Thanks, Dave. Danny?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name's Danny Small. I am founder and CEO of Vinci Consulting. I've spent close to 30 years in the construction industry. My background is in mechanical engineering, and I've spent the last 10 years or so on the consulting side of construction. I also spent some time at FMI, like Christian. And for the last 5.5, coming on 6 years, I've had my own consulting firm specializing in helping modular and prefab companies like mechanical and other trade contractors who have prefab shops to optimize their processes and implement lean principles, lean manufacturing principles to increase their productivity and their profitability.
Super. Thanks, Danny. So before we jump into all the material, we are going to have about 10 minutes at the end for questions. So just please exercise your ability to go through the chat line and ask any questions. Tamana will be reviewing those and teeing those up for us at the end of the program. Okay, so today's agenda, we're going to take a brief look at the trends.
Hey, Christian.
Yes, ma'am.
May you please share your deck? We can't see it.
Oh, sorry, I thought I had it up. Got it. How about now?
Yes, thank you so much.
Good call. So we're going to look at the trends driving prefab and modular. Look at where the technology is for the shop floor, and that's going to be a significant part of this presentation. Is how are you guys automating your shop floor? There's probably 3 primary strategies, and we're going to cover each one of those. Take a look at some of the pros and cons, as also in terms of where this is heading overall. Um, Danny's going to speak specifically on some of the ways in which a shop should be examining business processes and underlying organization for the shop, while Dave and I are focused a little bit more on the technology. Now, I will point out in terms of a setting expectations, we don't have all the answers today. We would be a bit presumptuous for us. I would say we have some very definite recommendations, but we also hope to share with you better questions, better context for what's happening, what's likely, so that you can in fact plan around your fabrication capability. So why are we here? Well, we've seen tremendous growth in the prefab and modular areas. I would say maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, this was really stemming from owners creating greater demand for prefab on their jobs. And this was owners, general contractors, and then pushing to electricals and mechanicals. Sometimes it was even stipulated in the contract how much modular prefab should be done. But then within the last 12 to 18 months, the demand for from the hyperscalers have really just made this a significant issue. We would suggest that the adoption of DFMA has remained limited. We're not seeing it as much as we'd like. We think it's necessary. I don't know if that's going to come from the owners, from the design community, from the mechanical engineers, but really until DFMA is fully adopted, or at least significantly adopted, creates some challenges in terms of adoption of technology further on. The shop floor automation has not kept pace. Now that's going to be a fairly stark comment, but we would suggest that the shop floor solutions that have been available for a good while were satisfactory for the needs of a sheet metal shop, some light assembly when you were pushing 1, 2, 3 jobs through a shop floor at one time, but they weren't true MRP solutions. And then the MRP solutions that are out there weren't really intended for engineer to order type of work, which is what we have. So our supposition here is that the technology needs to catch up. It was moving at an okay pace until the hyperscalers arrived, and now the demand is just over the top. And we would also suggest that maybe the design function, the detailing, and the field are sort of disconnected, other than maybe having access to a smart sheet or a Google sheet or some kind of spreadsheet that tries to communicate. But in terms of automation and workflow, it's not there. Some of this you guys are already familiar with. I don't want to spend too much time. Definitely seeing the skilled labor shortage, which Dave and I are going to address. The schedules are becoming ever more aggressive and demanding, which means you've got to be much more optimized in terms of how you move work through that floor. Definitely an increase in quality demand. When you're doing work for a commercial building and you're prefabricating some pipe racks, that's one level of QA. But when you're doing modular work for hyperscalers or for food and pharma, like the quality level is much higher. We also see some advantages from a climate control standpoint. You can work longer hours in Phoenix in the summer and work longer hours in the winter in Chicago when you have a controlled environment. So I think there's some advantages to the prefab there as well. And then certainly automation opportunities with robotic welding, CNC equipment, and so forth. So quite a bit is happening all at one time to sort of compel us as an industry toward modular and prefab. I'm not going to spend tons of time here just some statistics that I thought were rather interesting. The the data center construction, which is the graph on the left, you can see just how much of it is concentrated here in the U.S. and in Europe as well. And then the actual dollar value. I mean, if you can look at this now, this is prefabrication in general, but a large part of that's being driven by the hyperscalers. And then I thought this was rather interesting. FMI and the Modular Building Institute did a survey market study earlier in the year, and quite a bit of growth in multifamily residential, which our need around the U.S. for affordable housing certainly would continue to push that. Office and data center, interesting that they lump those together, but 7.1% growth versus 4 or something less in other sectors. And then lodging, interestingly enough, was a 9% increase, but starting from a little bit smaller number. So I think that there will continue to be demand for this coming from all sorts of areas. And I made a comment here that modular construction could be the next BIM. And I know that seems like an odd jump, but if you think about it, that was originally pushed by the owner, and the contractor kind of went along reluctantly, and now they wouldn't dream of building without BIM. So and it's embraced now by the industry for selfish reasons, not just because the owner said so. And I have a feeling that this modular prefab is going to be similar trend. So differences in operations between construction and traditional construction and manufacturing. I'm not going to spend too much time here. Just suffice to say that the construction job site is unique in its climate, in its space, in its resource availability. Many independent trades working together, GCs interfering with the schedule. There's a lot of variables in that construction environment, but some infinite capacity too. Whereas in manufacturing, you have a very fixed amount of space, limited equipment, limited manpower, and multiple jobs running through that shop floor at one time. So this is why MRP becomes important, is you can't just keep adding more and more resource into a manufacturing facility to get work done. So you have to be very thorough. The other thing is that you're not able to move. Some of these elements you're building aren't easily moved. So once you start assembly, they can't be just moved around on a shop floor to make room for other things. So Danny, you want to talk a little bit about stabilizing process before we get to automation?
Sure. So as we begin thinking about automation, we have to talk about stability. So automation multiplies whatever processes it touches. If the process is stable and well designed, then automation will make it faster and smoother and more reliable. But if the process is inconsistent, which is the case in many prefab shops today, automation doesn't fix that. It magnifies the chaos. It accelerates the variability in your process. So that's why lean is actually the foundation. Lean gives us predictable flow, consistent cycle times, accurate and reliable BOMs, and standard work sequences that eliminate guesswork. So stability matters because it removes unnecessary variation. It creates repeatable expectations for the team. It ensures production stays predictable. So that's how you actually maximize your ROI on automation. I always emphasize this key principle here. Automation executes the process. Lean defines the process. Okay. So on the left here, you can see what happens when automation is layered onto an unstable system. You get unpredictable cycles, quality issues, and lots of firefighting. On the right is what we're aiming for. Okay. Lean processes paired with automation, giving us consistent throughput, reliable quality, and operations that can actually scale. Okay, next slide. So Christian mentioned DFMA. Some of you may be familiar with it. Some of you may not, but DFMA is designed for manufacturing and assembly. It's really the bridge between BIM models and what the shop can actually build. Okay. DFMA transforms design intent into standardized, repeatable production units that can flow smoothly through manufacturing. So the advantage of DFMA is that it standardizes assemblies, it controls the BOM, and it defines repeatable build sequences. That's what makes automation efficient and what allows your CNC equipment to plug in seamlessly. So here's the critical insight. Automation starts at the design table, not on the shop floor. Okay. So successful DFMA requires really tight collaboration from end to end. On the design side, BIM modeling incorporates manufacturing intent early on, and instead of just creating a nice drawing, it generates something that's ready to be produced. Engineering then takes that model and translates it into manufacturable components, optimizing it for assembly, efficiency, and consistency. Then production executes it. But they also play a crucial role by giving feedback that feeds continuous improvement and the next iteration. So when these three groups work together, you get a smooth path from concept all the way through creation, which is essential for both scalability and your automation. Okay, next slide. Now, when you look at throughput constraints in a prefab shop, they always come back to one of three things: product, process, or people. Automation only multiplies performance when all three of these things are mature and aligned. So let's break that down. Product is about standardized DFMA kits and productized assemblies with clear and accurate BOMs. When the product is stable, you eliminate a huge amount of downstream guesswork. Process refers to the lean systems that create predictable flow, things like 5S and visual controls, tact planning, balanced workstations. These give you repeatable production rhythms that automation can actually work with. Finally, people are your trained cross-functional operators who understand standard work, they understand the system they're part of, and they can adapt intelligently when variation happens. So when product, process, and people are all optimized, then automation becomes a force multiplier. But, and this is really important, when those three elements are weak or misaligned, automation just amplifies the existing problems, as we mentioned earlier. It accelerates the pain instead of the performance. So equipment and systems do amplify flow, but only when product, process, and people are already strong. So the bottom line is this: before you automate the factory, you have to industrialize the product and operationalize the flow. Okay, next slide. Now, as prefab evolves, the organizational skills required to run a modern shop have to evolve with it. Automation and advanced manufacturing tools don't succeed unless the leadership and the operational mindset shift first. Okay. Now, traditionally, shop managers came through the trades. They were excellent at their craft, which really matters. But modern prefab requires more than craftsmanship. Okay. It requires lean thinking. It requires system level workflow design. It requires quality control, data-driven decisions, solid understanding of DFMA. So leaders today have to move from supervising individual tasks to managing integrated production systems. It's a very different role. Now, so without that factory mindset, without strong lean and manufacturing skills, automation is going to struggle. Investments will underperform. The shop gets constrained instead of unlocked. So the good news is that these skills can be developed. We can train our current people, or we can bring in new talent with manufacturing experience. But they're essential skills for any shop that's looking to scale. I like to put it this way. Knowing a trade helps you build great parts. Knowing lean in manufacturing helps you build a factory that can grow. And that's the transition from the old style shop manager focused on the trade to the new prefab manager focused on processes and systems.
Danny, do you think it's worth, is it possible to bring somebody in to manage the shop who has manufacturing experience but doesn't know construction?
Um, Possible, but not probable. I think ideally you'd find somebody that has experience at the intersection. Um, but yeah, those folks are pretty rare, right? Usually what you need to do is start with one or the other and then cross-train them into the other discipline. Um, but if I had to pick, um, I would probably I've seen it work both ways.
It's
Just
tough, isn't
based
it?
on,
Tough
yeah,
question.
just based
It,
on access and availability, I would probably choose to start with somebody who knows the trade and who is really has a mind for systems, and then train them on the manufacturing systems component.
right.
Um,
Okay.
that's probably how I would approach it. But yeah, you can definitely do that. But ideally, you'd have somebody that is a kind of a hybrid.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Danny. All right.
Mhm.
So where have we been from an automation standpoint? I'm sure nobody on the call remembers the dark days of having magnetic boards, dry erase boards, monstrous spreadsheets. But that's where we came from as an industry. Um, there you had some early stage MRP systems that were out there. Um, and but very little integration among all these tools. So everything was its own independent spreadsheet or smart sheet or dry erase board, and just very inefficient, I would say. Um, Dave, any of this resonate for you? Maybe 10 years ago?
Yeah, and then where we are like today is probably what I would say, and I think this is going to be fairly common for a lot of maybe the larger or maybe the more sophisticated mechanicals, but a lot of us have we've got really good BIM systems. A lot of us are on, say, the Autodesk fabrication platform. So we've got that good CAM component. Um, we have in our shop, we've got laser tables and plasma tables and water jets and multi-axis pipe cutters and tiger stops and all kinds of other pieces of equipment. And those are all driving so all of those shop machines are getting their CNC direction directly from the BIM. So what a lot of us have done is we've really tightened up that process from coordinated BIM through to running the machines. I believe where a lot of us are focused right now is downstream of the shop of the downstream of that of when the CNC information is conveyed to the shop. So we're working right now on whether it's custom solutions or we use a combination of Stratus and in custom software to manage that downstream of the shop. But I think, Kristen, where you're going to take us next is maybe just a little bit of a broader understanding of what a true MRP solution would look like in our environment.
Yeah, that's the idea for sure. So um, let's talk a little bit about the dilemma that we have. I mentioned three alternatives, and I'm going to mention names just because we're all friends here. And I don't want you guys to interpret some of the companies that we mentioned as endorsements or anything contrary. It's more of just so you understand what kind of solutions we're speaking of. So we're really talking about classes of software. So you really have three sort of options. One is the standalone MRPs, and I'm really reluctant to, I'm sorry, to call it MRP because it's exactly what Dave was mentioning. It's the solutions that go from a model to uh, maybe a bomb, and communicate out to the CNC equipment, um, but and maybe produce a traveler or a work package. But really, that's about it. There's no overall coordination of all of that data. So I'm going to riff some names now. You've got there was Strumis, there was um, um, Manufacton, there was M Suite, there is Stratus. So all of these are very strong solutions early stage in the management of BIM model data, and creating spool packages and racks and things. But the drop off after that is pretty significant without an underlying database that can manage all that and manage the work all the way through the uh, uh, shop floor. Okay, then you move to the manufacturing ERP. Now, this is an area that many of the companies in our industry do not yet have experience with. Everybody has experience with Viewpoint Vista or Coins or Penta or Sage and so forth. And none of those solutions, while they were great for job costs, construction, et cetera, they really didn't have anything for MRP. It wasn't even in their vocabulary. There is a class of software now that's coming forward, you'll see in a few minutes, that really does offer MRP capability along with construction and inventory management and billing and so forth. And so but that necessitates a movement out of current construction ERP, which is uncomfortable for some companies. And then the last option is what a lot of companies have really endeavored over time, because 10 years ago, there wasn't anything in the second column, and some of the first column were pretty basic as well. And so what a lot of companies, and I think Dave Hill would be in this category, started building I know several other large mechanicals started building their own, whether they were doing it in a proper development language or just using Google Sheets to a level that was like never seen before. Like building custom was the third alternative. And I think these are the three avenues that are available to mechanicals and electricals today. Okay, so I'm going to linger here for a minute because if there's one slide I'd like everybody on the session to understand, it's this one. So this is how work would flow through a proper solution. You would have the design and modeling over here in Revit or SolidWorks. There would be DFMA or 4D, 5D capability built in. Now this is all the design detailing that's going on. There is a transition from there to the staging. In the staging function, a BOM would be created with all the materials that are required in order that they be bought or pulled from inventory. And then work packages are also created. The work packages are all the spools or racks or whatever that have to be built. Those transition into the MRP. So then the MRP would then contain the job cost capability, the billing, the advanced planning. Can I even take this job on, or am I overloaded on resources? You'll also see here your HR system. MRP wants to know what are the skills and capabilities of all the people on the floor. They're going to match it up. So if Dave is on the floor and he's trying to assign Danny to go do some work and Danny doesn't have the capability, it should tell him, hey, you can't make Danny do that work. He doesn't have the proper welding certification. So that constant update of your HR profile to feed MRP and do the certification checking, pretty critical. And this gets particularly important as you grow and move into all of these high demand, high specification industries like pharma, like food, like hyperscalers, they want to know who did the weld and were they certified. The other thing that's not in any of the ERPs that our industry works on today is QA/QC. So we don't have any QA/QC capability that ties to the MRP work package in the systems we're using today. They just didn't need it. But in today's shop floor environment, you have to have that. And the reason is if something fails, if I have non-conformance and I've got to kick something back, then the scheduling software needs to know that, hey, this is not going to make it out of welding to assembly because it failed. We got to redo it. So keeping up with that coordination is very important. And we're going to talk a little bit further about procurement in just a couple minutes, but I've got to bring the bit bomb over to procurement so I can start buying all the parts. But I also want the procurement system to feed MRP so that I know I can schedule work to begin as soon as the material has arrived. So, maybe not lastly, but I've also got the CNC equipment on here. So as soon as I moved into staging, I then need to be able to move instructions and specifications to the CNC equipment as soon as it's ready to be fabricated. And then undergirding all of this is what Danny was suggesting earlier, which is processes, procedures, and accountability have to be present, or this whole process kind of breaks down. Now, I think, well, what you're going to see is that in today's environment, current landscape, the red outline shows you where we have spreadsheets. We have spreadsheets for the staging, we have spreadsheets for QA, we have spreadsheets for MRP, for advanced planning, and that's being generous. I'm sure there's more than that existing. Well, that's problematic because it's very much not integrated. If you look at a manufacturing capable ERP, you've got all of this function built into one program, one database, one set of dashboards. It makes for a compelling argument. It is absolutely a heavy lift, and it won't be appropriate, necessary for everybody, but it is, it's important, we think, for you to understand there is software that handles this massive amount of data and coordination available in the marketplace. And we're going to mention names here in a minute, but what I would tell you is that the standalone MRP solutions that we mentioned earlier are moving quickly from the left into the right. They're not going to become ERP solutions, but they are going to start handling work packages, feeding procurement, and so forth. And they've already started working on QA. Question is, how quickly can they get there? Because the demand is now. Now, Dave, you and I should talk about this for just a minute. So this section here is really a level of detail greater than what we had on the left in the second box here. So the Revit data does not automatically generate a BOM and a work package. Sometimes that has to be built out. The Revit model also sometimes has estimated work hours, man hours, like MCAA hours or something. Sometimes it has scheduled data, but frequently not. So how do you get Revit model data to the proper LOD and incorporate schedule and estimate? And our feeling is that there are solutions now that can really take the model data out of Revit, incorporate schedule and estimate, create the BOM, do quality check, etc., and prep it for CNC equipment. Now, Dave, in your shop, where is that happening now?
That's some of it's manual, some of it's in our custom software.
Okay. But now, is there a challenge with bringing that much detail into Revit, for example? Does Revit performance start to bog down when you put too much in there?
We would see that more on the in the coordination phase. But remember, we're just taking our specific mechanical models, right? And then, so, again, one thing where we probably, have done a decent job is being able to take it out of BIM and put it into our CAM software and get that to the shop floor. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect, but like that's one area where I think where we have done a good job. I think where we're all ears here, is like um it's not um certainly not tied to schedule or estimate. And there excuse me, and there certainly isn't an easy connection to our ERP.
Right, right. Okay, we're going to hit that in just a second. So then here is the thank you for that, by the way. So here's the life cycle of a shop floor work order. And I wanted to show you this because it's hard to appreciate the importance, the significance of what we're driving at here until you really understand the amount of data that we're talking about. So we've got this initial work package, which has the spool, drawings, dimensions, man hours, work step schedule, all that data is on that. Then we move into scheduling, like when can it be fabricated? When is it needed? What are the conflicts? What are the QA steps? All of that. Then we get into the material requirements. How many do we need? What size, dimension do they come in? Do I need heat certs and serial numbers? Then we get into the production on the shop floor. The guys and gals are scanning in, badging in something to indicate that they're working on a given piece, spool, or weld, tracking the man hours against budget. Then we've got the QA step after that. And that will, and then finally the project closeout. Now, if you have all of that data in a single database, then you have the ability to create dashboards like this is just a mock-up. Don't read too carefully into it, but this having a dashboard over this so I can see what jobs are bogging down, what material is behind that's going to cause us to be at risk of being completed. Do we need submittal approval for anything? Do we have manpower shortage coming up in the next 2 months? Like all of that data is created automatically rather than having to be created manually in a spreadsheet, which is what so many companies do today. I also wanted to point out that the better this process gets, the higher the data quality becomes, the higher the value. A lot of companies, when they're dealing with spreadsheets for all of this, the data would be suspect at best. Okay, so now everybody on the call, here's your first quiz. And we're not doing polling questions, sorry about that, but just answer this in your head. You need a part for something you're making and you go to the bin. Your part is there, you see it. What do? Take the part, I got there first, check to see if anybody's looking, or check the system to confirm the part is available and request the part through your tablet or mobile device. Now, this question is tongue in cheek a little bit, but I'm asking it for a reason because if the operating process in the company was, if it's in the bin, I'm taking it, your MRP system won't work. Like Danny said earlier, you have to get into the discipline, the rigor of focusing on following procedures so the system is correct. The problem is if you take that valve out of a box and don't record it, the next person who goes there, because they see it on inventory that there's one available, they go to the box and it's not there and nobody reordered it. So we have to enforce a discipline in the shop to manage material, for example, or the system will really start to break down. Okay. So I mentioned some product names. I'm not going to dwell here too long, but everybody's familiar with the products on the left, Oracle and SAP. They can do everything we just talked about and then some. very expensive, very difficult to implement. We've heard horror stories. We're not going to really be promoting that idea unless you're a very, very large company. The tier 1.5 ERPs are products like IFS, Infor, and Microsoft Dynamics. What's interesting about those three is that they've been in manufacturing for a long time, and probably within the last 5 years, 7 years, have moved into construction. So they have job cost, change orders, forecasting, procurement, billing, AIA, all that. But they also have a strong backbone for the manufacturing. So those solutions will cover the footprint that I was describing earlier today. A tier 2 ERP that is has manufacturing capability is Acumatica. Now, in all fairness, I have not evaluated the manufacturing component, so I can't really attest, but should be at least worth consideration. And then you have your tier 3 ERPs, which are Coin, CMIC, Sage, and Penta. There's other ones. Those don't have MRP at all. And so what you're going to find is you'll push a bomb over to Coins or CMIC, and Coins or CMIC can do the purchasing, but there's no feedback mechanism. So I can't get an update to my MRP that my material's been ordered, that my material's been shipped, that my material's been received. So that's a bit of a drag. The other thing is now I've got my payroll and my labor costing in one system, and I've got my shop floor in a different system. So not necessarily ideal. I've been on these vendors, the tier 3 vendors, for at least 5 years, trying to persuade them that they need to integrate with the likes of a Stratus or a M Suite or a Manufacton or systems like that. And I would say I haven't been I haven't been persuasive enough yet. Okay, I want to keep us moving. I think the need for the advanced procurement, there is so much more demand when you're buying for manufacturing than you do when you're buying, and the volumes are higher than when you're buying for, let's say, a job site. And so vendor management, vendor performance, QA, tracking and traceability, RFQs, these are all things that contractors need to be enhancing. And systems like Coupa, GEP, and Jagger, Kojo, and Remarkable are all dedicated procure to pay solutions. So if you don't have a robust ERP with it, with procurement in it, then you might look at a Kojo Remarkable, and they would, or Coupa, they would pick up the procurement data, the BOM, from the Stratus M Suite type of solution. Now, just as a quick note, and I would say go ahead and put your questions in if you'd like, because we're drawing close to the end here. The MRP maturity is something you grow into. It is not something that you put in and like all at once. So you will find staging available, and this is very generic diagram here, but you might have 3 stages, you might have 5, it doesn't really matter, but just it's overwhelming to think about if you're trying to imagine doing all of this at one time, but you can stage it so that, kind of like Danny was saying, your processes and your procedures will lead and your automation follow, and you get to that first stage, and then you add a layer and get good at it, and then you add another layer. So we would say, think of this in sort of stages, but don't be general about it. Like, get specific. Make this diagram yours by putting in what is stage 1 for you, what is stage 2 for you. I think that's a helpful way of seeing your way through that journey. So a couple of things in conclusion. The reason we brought this program to you is we feel like the industry is changing and we have to adapt. And these are big decisions, they're critical, long-term in nature. So we wanted you to have a little sense of the context of what's happening. I think that fabricating and modular contractors have to think differently than they did when they were small and just handling a few jobs through the shop at one time. Um, Organizations have to get, I mean, I am on a, a warpath with spreadsheets in most organizations trying to eliminate as much as possible. Now, the vendor community is on alert and they are investing heavily in this capability. Whether or not they can, get there on a timely basis to be determined. And that's why I say no clear direction yet. Um, I think that I think that maybe the direction is there, the momentum is what we don't know. Um, but I would say it's not too early to be in planning and improving processes because from everything I see, we're going to be doing more and more of this. The owners are going to become more demanding for this. You will differentiate from your competitors through your ability to prefab and do modular. So I think there's a lot of good reason. Um, Danny, or Dave, any concluding remarks before we open it up for questions? Okay, so let's
Muted.
move. So Tamana, do you want to get some questions out?
Yes, I think the first question would be, Danny, if you could tell us, how do you know whether a shop is actually ready for automation?
Great question. And honestly, most shops think they're closer than they actually are. When I assess automation readiness, I look for, I guess, three things right away. First, product stability. If you're building the same assembly 5 different ways, depending on who's working that day, you're not ready. Okay. Automation hates variation. So a standardized DFMA kits and consistent bombs are step one. The second thing that I look for is predictable process flow. If your cycle times are swinging wildly day to day, then and your work queues are backing up unpredictably, the team is spending more time hunting for materials and clarifying drawings and mistakes on the drawings than actually building, then that's going to get amplified by automation, not solved by it. Okay. The third
Degree
thing,
degree of rework, would you say?
right, exactly. And then thirdly, how engaged are the operators and how capable are they, right? Automation requires disciplined execution. If standard work isn't followed today, it definitely isn't going to be followed when machines speed everything up. Okay. So I guess the quick test would be something like, if you automated your shop today, would the process get smoother or would it just fall apart faster? Okay. If the answer is it would start falling apart faster, then your first investment shouldn't be a robot. It should be in stabilizing your flow.
Good answer. Thank you. Tamana, what's next?
Thanks, Danny. I think, Dave, question for you would be, how much robotic welding are you seeing on the shop floors?
Just through some MCA events and stuff like that over the last like 2-3 years, I've seen I've seen a lot more. I've seen some pretty sophisticated shops out there start to use them. I will to speak to our own experience. Those machines are really expensive. And so what's critical for us is understanding the ROI and making sure that we have a handle on it. And that's for us. I think we're going to be in the market for at least doing a much more robust discovery on the feasibility of that technology, of those technologies here in 2026, primarily because some of the things Christian mentioned earlier, right? So if you go back 2 years, our ROI really had to do with, we didn't have a shortage of high quality welders in our specific area, and our locals do a really good job with training and things like that. So the ROI, it was a little bit tougher for us to have it make sense. But with all of the work that, and we all know what we're up against, that Christian mentioned earlier, right? The ROI is totally different. Speed, stability, to Danny's point, and safety and quality. Those things are all much more important, especially considering that it is no longer so straightforward to just go out to the market and get another, and get more high quality welders. So it's the ROI that's changed for us a lot over the last year.
Good. Any
Thanks,
other
Dave.
questions?
Yeah, I think we have one more. Give me one. Okay. Are manufacturing ERPs becoming easier to implement in compressed timelines, especially for customers who are chasing data centers? The timelines seem aggressive to upgrade and stabilize tools. It makes folks look for point solutions, but questions the lack of a connected database and insights.
Well, I'm glad somebody was listening to this program because that's a very appropriate question. I would say that you're looking at a year, best case, to get a full-blown ERP in place that contains MRP. I don't know that you could run the MRP engine by itself without the rest of some at least of the rest of the accounting components implemented, like procurement, for example. I think that whether you have, I think the partner that you choose to help you implement the ERP is, I don't want to say more important than the product, but right up there with the product itself. You've got to have someone that understands engineer to order kind of work, understands construction, understands certainly construction accounting principles and all that. I mean, they're out there, but they're sometimes hard to find. And no, these software products do not implement themselves. And I would also advocate for more of a staged approach where we just get the current ERP replaced, up and running, and then start adding on some of the more advanced functionality, advanced capability, because trying to do it all at once would be pretty challenging. I think the other thing that leads to a quicker implementation, quicker time to value, is committing the right people to the job from your own organization. That's essential because they have to know where you're headed and set the direction, do the hard work that comes with implementing. Too many companies will buy software and contract for services, assuming that the vendors are going to implement and they're just going to train you. But that is not the case. They are going to train you on how the software works. You have to set it up, which they'll help you with. Then you've got to do the hard work of testing, and that takes time. So I would anticipate a year, best case. And I do think that that's one of the things that makes the third-party MRPs somewhat compelling, is I can get something stood up pretty quickly and wait for them to develop the rest of the MRP engine. So
Thanks, Christian.
sure.
We have two more questions if we have time. The first one is, do you believe that just-in-time fabrication is still feasible given the current factors in construction, trade, and owner requirements?
Dave, you want to take a pass at
I
that?
can tell you, for us, that's not possible. It's
Okay.
it's not with the workload the way it is.
So now that I understand, thank you, that helps. So basically, 10 years ago, when we had 2-3 jobs dribbling through at one time, and all of a sudden somebody came in and said, "Hey, can you do this fab?" We're like, "Sure." And then you put something off to the side and do the job, and then get back to planned work. But because the work right now is planned out so long in advance and everything is so tight in terms of tolerances, there's no way you can just like show up and say, hey, make this. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, it's just there's the volume, when the volume gets so much. Now I know there are some really big mechanicals out there that have multiple shops, and they may have that ability to like balance or level load between shops. We're in the process of building out a couple more shops right now. But just right now we are a single large shop, and it's increasingly less possible to run it in a just-in-time protocol.
That I would concur. From all the shops I've been in, that's definitely the case. Tamana, we're up on time. Why don't we let's go ahead and close. Let everybody get to their next meetings. Thank you everybody for your questions, for your attendance. Natalie will be sending out a quick survey at the end here to get your feedback and your input. The three of us would love to hear what you thought about this program, and if you'd like us to follow up with maybe a second one early next year. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks, everybody.